Here we go. All right, so a big part of chapter 7 is being able to write an equation of a linear line. Okay, so I'm going to show you two methods to write them. Okay, first part of class, I'm going to use slope y-intercept form, okay, to write the equation. And you guys all agree that this is a very familiar form for you, right? So to be able to write an equation using this form, guess what you need? You will need what do I need to be able to complete my information and write the equation so I could graph it or do whatever I want with it? What do I need? What two pieces of information, guys? Exactly, I need slope and I need the y-intercept, okay? Right, so that is the two pieces of information you need to be able to write the equation, okay? So there's going to be questions, okay, where I might give you both, okay? So if I give you both, you just substitute those values in, you write the equation in terms of x and y, okay? But as you guys know, should there be at least some kind of twist to what I'm doing today? Right? If I always give you M and B, there's not a lot of process that you have to do. So the easiest one is if you have that information, you put it in. The other piece is I can give you some information and it not necessarily be the slope and the y-intercept, but enough information about the line that you can figure out M and you can figure out B. So that's what our goal is today, using this method. And then second part of class, I'll show you another way we can do it, okay? All right, so this just talks about what we just talked about here. What does M represent? What does B represent? Okay, all right, so this is the scenario. So determine the equation of each line in the form y equals mx plus b with the given information below. So this A would be the easiest one, because do I literally give you the information? Yeah. So here you're given the information, so all you have to do is substitute it into the formula, okay? So, ladies, Izzy, Crystal, you can work on it, but not with together, because that's distracting for me. All right, so if you forget, is that on your formula sheet? Yes, it's on your formula sheet if you forget. So treat it like a formula. It's a formula that can help you write an equation. So all you have to do is take this minus 3 over 5, substitute it into the formula for M. Right? The y-intercept specifically is your B. Right? So this literally is just substitute those numbers into your formula and you're done. So then our equation would be y equals negative 3 over 5x plus 7. That is the equation of your linear line, finished in the form it wants you to have it in. Because it does specifically say, determine the equation of each line in the form y equals mx plus b. Check, we've done that. So your equation, when you're done, should show your slope, and it should show you your y-intercept. Okay. So next one is it fair if I actually give you a graph and ask you to write the equation? Yeah, because you can get your information off your graph as well. One's super quick, right? What's the one that's super quick that you can literally just look at and tell me? The y-intercept, right? So looking at this, the y-intercept is at -1. Exactly. So this little guy right here, right, is your y-intercept. And not that you have to do all this, I'm just collecting the information, right? You could just put -1 in for B. So you know that that's the y-intercept, so you know that B equals -1, okay? Slope, a little bit more work, right? So you just need to find another point on the graph. So you go along the line and find another integer point. So let's go along, doesn't matter which direction. I'm going to use this one. Could you technically use the one down below as well? Yeah, it doesn't matter. You just need 2 though, you don't need 3. So I'm going to use those 2 points. So if I use those 2 points, that means I'm rising how many? If I go from the bottom point to the top point, I'm rising 3 and I'm running 2. Right, so my slope, and again, I'm writing way more information than I need to, but this is what your thought process should be. Right, so I rose 3, and I went up, so it's positive, and I went forward, which is positive. And you guys all know that lines that slant up to the right have a positive slope. So we just figured out that m is 3 over 2. So it's basically a check. I need my y-intercept, I need my slope. So therefore, we can now write our equation. So y equals 3 over 2x minus 1. So when you're finished, you should have an equation, okay, in terms of x and y, if there's a slant to the line. And the reason why I say in terms of x and y if there's a slant to the line is we talked about horizontal and vertical lines. Will that one look a little bit different? Right, if I gave you guys a graph that just had a vertical line on it, what types of equations are those? Do you guys remember? Yes. Right, you just said it. They are x equals, right, a constant, wherever that line is going through the x-axis. Okay. Horizontal lines have no what? Right, they have no rise or run, so there's no x, right? So your horizontal lines are always just y equals a constant. Right. So those are what we talked about yesterday, is all the equations you will write will be in terms of x and a y, unless you have a horizontal or vertical line. Okay, then one of those variables will be missing. All right, so those would be the 2 easiest types, right, is where you have m and b right off the bat, or you're given a graph and finding m and b is pretty quick. All right, so here, this one says you have the slope, okay, so you have what parameter? If I have slope, I have parameter m, right? But then it says it, so your slope is 5, and then the line passes through the point, -1 and 7. So which parameter am I missing to be able to just write the equation? I'm missing. So when I say parameters, guys, those are the variables that we're solving for, okay? So we have a parameter m and we have a parameter b, right? Which parameter m does stand for slope, parameter b does stand for y-intercept. So from this information, which parameter am I missing? B. I'm missing b, right? But you're given a random point on the line, so any random point on a graph is made up of a what variable? X and y, exactly. So, guess what? You have m, you have x, you have y. Can you use those to substitute into your formula, and guess what you can do? You can solve, because look, if I put this, whoopsie, if you put this in for m, you put this in for x, and you put this in for y, whoops, do you guys agree that the only thing that doesn't have something substituted in is the b? So you can solve, okay? So if you're given a slope and a point, you can use your slope and point in the formula to solve for b. So it's just a quick solving for b. So watch what that looks like. So y is 7 equals m is 5. And remember the m connected to the x like that? What operation is happening between those 2 parameters? Right, multiplication. So it's 5 times -1 plus b. So then I have 7 equals -5 plus b. So it's just a one-step equation that we're solving. We'll not add 3. Goodness gracious. Add 5 to both sides. So 7 plus 5 is going to give me 12 equals b. So now you have m and b. Now you can write your equation. Okay. So go ahead, write your equation on your line. Sorry, I just got 2 before. It's a big deal. Voila, good. So y equals 5x plus 12. So when you're finished, okay, you should have an equation in front of you that technically, could we now put that on the graphing calculator and graph it if we wanted to? Right? It's in terms of x, it's in terms of y. Both of them need to be there. All right. So the last scenario that is going to happen is if I give you 2 points. Okay. So if I give you 2 points, you're missing both m and y. But do we have a slope formula? Right? So what do we need to be able to find our slope? We need 2 points, right? Which would get us our rise over run scenario. Difference of our y's over difference of our x's. So if you're missing m and b, you'll be given 2 points. So if you're given 2 points, that allows us to find the slope using our slope formula. And then once we get our slope, then we're doing what we just did, right? Because if you have your slope, can we definitely find our y-intercept? Yes, it's just you have 2 options for points instead of 1. Okay, so watch what I mean. So you know your slope formula. To figure out the rise, it's the difference of your y's, right? And to find out your run, you have to find the distance between your x values. So those are your y's. They have to go on top. Those are the x's. They have to go on the bottom. Okay. And that will get you the distance, right? Because that's what our slope is, right? If you take the difference of the y's, that will get us our distance, right? How far apart the y values are. So what number do you guys want to do first on top? Do you want to do the 6 on first or the 4 on first? 6, sure. So then it's going to be 6 minus 4. And then you guys tell me what I did wrong. Exactly. I can't flip. If I start in my second bracket first on top, right, I have to start on with my second bracket on the bottom. Not very many did that. Like most of you did it correct on your quiz, but some of you flipped them. You can't do that. Okay. So again, if you start here first, right, you have to start here first on the bottom. So 2 minus a -2. Which again, guys, if you're picturing it, you should think, if I'm at -2 and I'm going to +2, that's a distance of 4, right? If you picture actually counting the blocks. So 6 minus 4 is 2 divided by 4, which now we just calculated. We'll always reduce our slope if we can. So we have a slope of half. Okay. So you had to work for your slope. It wasn't given it to you right off the bat. Now you can solve for b. Okay. So you wouldn't solve for b first. Okay. The only way you could solve for b first is if you plotted your points and then figured out the slope and then rised and run until you went through the y-axis and visually seen. Would that take a while to do? I would never encourage you to do it. It would take forever. Well, take a lot longer, not maybe forever. All right, so which point do you guys want to use? So now we have to pick one of the points. So this is kind of your instructions that you're doing in your head. I'm writing it down so you guys can visually see what you need to think about. So you pick, not on, pick one of the points to solve for B. Does it matter which one you pick? Nope. Right? If I pick the first point, you pick the second point, we're getting the same answer because there are 2 points on the same line. So you guys pick, do you want to use negative 2 comma 4 to solve for B, or do you want to use 2 comma 6? Yeah. And why did you guys all say that? Yeah, if you can avoid integers, do you want to? Absolutely, right? I'd pick 2 comma 6 as well, right? Because it's just a nicer point. But again, if you want to be crazy and pick the other point, we're going to get the same answer, right? So the point you guys want to pick, which I also want to pick, is 2 comma 6. So we've chose that to be our xy. So I'm just gathering the information that you need to be able to solve for B. And we already found our slope to be 1 over 2. So we had to calculate that first before we could solve for B. So now it's exactly like we did above, right? So then you grab your formula, y equals mx plus b, and you put your information in, right? So y is 6, m is half, times x, which is 2, plus b. So 6 equals, so if you go half times 2, you get a 1. Good. So it looks like b is going to equal 5. So you have m, you have b. Now you can write your equation. So y equals 1 over 2 x plus b, which is 5. So you guys do E. I'm going to quietly do it. Look up when you're done. And if you've already done it because you worked ahead, then you could be in your assignment booklet.